Okay, this is a question I get asked a lot. I want to talk about rent prices in Tirana and how to find apartments. I have my notes here. I just sketched this out like 5 minutes ago, so I'm sorry if it's like a bit unorganized and whatnot. And I don't know, and I'll try to make a description below. So the first thing I think people should define is like, what does it mean to live in the center, and what does it mean to you, and how close do you want to live? For me, it's not that important because there's not really anything that's going on in the center that, like, there's nothing happening that often where I need to live that close. I live probably like, if you do a New York walk, maybe like 30 minutes, but maybe for somebody else, 40 minutes, 45 minutes to Scunder Bay Square. But for me, my location is just fine. But so for you, I think you first need to define, a lot of foreigners want, or immigrants want to live near the center. I'm not really sure why, because I don't know what's happening there besides looking at a bunch of cafes and the occasional little festival that's there, but there's not many events happening that often where I think living near the center is absolutely necessary. That's just my opinion. The second thing I want to say is that perhaps you might need a VPN for certain websites, because as I was looking at them, I think it was like a website called Nyoftime Falas. It was blocked here in Albanian for some reason, but people are still posting on there, and I needed a VPN to access it. The next thing is that there are real estate agents. I believe that they take half of the month's rent as their fee, and that some of these agents are not as professional as you may expect. Like the guy that helped us find this house didn't do a damn thing. He barely talked to the landlord, was not really interactive. Like he was a real estate agent, but not professional at all, not even useful, to be honest. We did not need him in any way except to sign the contract. And some other real estate agents and even landlords themselves may be very pushy, just letting you know that. So if you're the type of person that can't really say no, just keep that in mind, or have somebody with you, because like, for example, I'm helping my friend look for an apartment right now, which prompted me to make this video. And she asked this guy, hey, can we get the rent down to like 450? He says, I don't know, I have another client, or another person asking. He talks to that other person and sends her a message the same day and says, okay, that person says they don't want it. I will give you this apartment for 450. We will meet on Thursday at 9 a.m. to sign the contract. Like, using this language, being straightforward and very pushy. But that's also a little bit normal at the same time. So that's also something to be mindful of. The other thing is that I think you can probably talk people down about 50 euros for prices at least. Or the other thing I would suggest is, by the way, all the prices are mentioned in euro. It's a bit odd for me, but that's what it is for, I guess, larger services, because I guess people trust the euro more. Perhaps one of the other things you can do is ask them to put the price in lek if possible. The other thing I've noticed is that some apartments may be gone within a day. Like they can be posted online at 1 p.m. You send them a message at 2 p.m. and they'll say the apartment is taken. That happens. The other thing is that I spoke to a real estate agent. She was a really, really, really nice lady. Shout out to her. And she said that she believes that the prices are rising here because of Airbnb, where the landlords go on there and they see how much they could potentially make within a month for their apartment, and they're kind of reflecting that in their own price and hiking their prices up just because of that. Another thing to be mindful of is ask where the landlord lives, because the properties that we looked at recently, I noticed how close by some of the landlords live, like next door, above, beside you, in the same property. And it depends on the type of person you are, of course, but for me, I know that can be annoying because I know the culture here, and especially if the landlord is like an older lady, they will be all up in your business. But also very, very helpful. So if you're the type of person that requires your own personal space, I would not suggest having a landlord that lives near you. My landlord lives in Greece, comes here maybe 2-3 times a year. That's perfect for me. Now apparently also you have to show bank statements to show like your income, to show that you can afford living in this house. That's a new thing I haven't heard of, haven't gone through this process, but just be mindful that that could be something that you might have to do. I forgot to add this in my notes, but also if you are an LGBT couple, it could be harder for you to find an apartment because homophobia exists rampantly here. So that's just something to be mindful of, is how you present yourself when looking for an apartment. Keep that in mind. Say your roommate, say your best friend, say your colleagues, or something like this if you need to. That's just my personal suggestion. The other thing is that contracts typically last a year. I don't think you can find contracts for less than a year, to be honest. But there are some day rentals as well. I found that my landlord has also, like, I guess in my building, they're doing some day rentals. No, I'm not giving any information on that at all. but that is like a thing here now that's slowly developing, is day rentals. And I think they're really hard to find, but also, again, I think you can check the Facebook group that they have, expats in Tirana or expats in Albania, for that. The other things is, I think, two things I think are important to check. There's multiple things, but one of them is that when you're in the house, ask if there are any mold issues, from like previous mold issues, but also check under the sink or anywhere that mold could grow, maybe in the bathroom as well. And just use your eyes to see if that happens, because mold is a problem sometimes in these houses from what I've noticed, and it's not really taken that seriously here, whereas in the US it's like a, you know, a major thing. Also check the water pressure too, and also check if the water is like constantly there. Maybe there's like water outages sometimes, which is not really, that doesn't happen often, at least in my case. But my first 2.5 years living here in my apartment, I had cold water 24/7, but I did not have hot water at all hours of the day. And at the end, when I was moving, I found out that there was a hot water heater for the whole building on the 3rd floor that somebody would unplug, and I didn't know this, so I would have to plug that in to have hot water before I wanted to shower. The other thing I would suggest asking is about the 2019 earthquake and how it felt in that building, if they were living there at the time or if there was any damage, just because earthquakes are not really a thing here, but that 2019 one was really traumatic for, I think, most of the people living near the epicenter, or Tirana as well. That was terrifying. Like, I panic when I think about earthquakes because it was so bad. Like, the tiles on my floors cracked a little bit, the walls in my house cracked, and like the paint was chipping off and some of the piece of the wall as well. So just keep in mind that earthquakes could happen, and I do not believe that the buildings here, I don't think there's like an earthquake code or whatever it's called to build your buildings. I think people are building freely and that gets ignored, and corners get cut sometimes. So just ask about that, and you probably will not get the answer if your building is up to code, but you can at least ask, like, how was the experience of the earthquake during that time, in case there's another one. Knock on wood, I hope there's not. I think I said this already, the real estate fee is half the first month, and normally you have to pay 3 months deposit, and sometimes 2 months if you can talk them down. I would also suggest asking what changes can be made to the house, because the walls here are not like drywall in the US. I think they're like concrete base or something, so it could be a pain. But sometimes people will let you know, put up a picture, sometimes they will not. Also ask if pets are allowed. From what I've noticed, from us asking recently, most of the people were like, no pets. But there was one guy who was like, yeah, whatever, it's your apartment. And I noticed everyone asks, and they're really big on being respectful of space and being quiet. So they've all emphasized, please, they've all asked, like, how many people are living in the house? How often are you having guests over? Like, no loud music. They push this a lot in all of the like conversations we've had with these people. I was gonna say interviews, but that's the wrong word. If you're a single girl, I would suggest asking about neighbors, just because neighbors can be creepy. If there's like a single man living there and you're an attractive girl and you're alone, you could get harassed. I'm gonna be dead honest with you, because that's happened to some of my friends. Even walking at night, these men harass girls. And harass, and I use this word because they don't have any swag, so it just comes off as very creepy in the way they approach girls and talk to girls. They'll send them messages saying, hey, let's have sex. Like, they're very direct sometimes here in what seems to me in a very barbaric way, because they lack the charisma to actually flirt with women, from what I've noticed and from what my female friends say here. I would also ask the landlord before you move in how repairs are dealt with, because like I've had a plumbing issue and I've had an electrical issue, and when that happened, my landlord was like, he was not trying to hear about it at all. And I was like, hey, listen, how should I do this? Should I take the money out of the rent and pay for it up front, or are you going to pay for it? So what happened to me is I paid for it up front and I just took the money out of the rent, and he wasn't really happy about that. But again, this is his apartment, so he should be covering it. So I would just recommend having a conversation with your landlord beforehand so that you know how to handle it. My washing machine also broke at some point. I had to buy a new one myself, and I think he said, and this is after I bought it, he said, oh, if you decide to leave it, I'll reimburse you and pay half of it if you leave it here. Otherwise, you can just buy one for yourself and take it when you go. That was the solution. Instead of him buying one for the house and replacing it, this is what we had to do. And it varies from landlord to landlord. Some are really nice. I typically have only had good experiences, to be honest, but some of my friends have not had the best experiences with landlords here. Also, inquire about how the water and the electricity bill is paid. Typically, there are two little books, pamphlets that you can get, and you can take them to the water and electric place, and they stamp it, and you pay on the spot. I've always done it myself, but my friends here, for some reason, their landlords go to this place for them, pay it for them, and then give the person staying in the house the receipt to pay them. And I think they do this because they don't trust the resident to pay it for themselves on time. Sorry for the background noise. I don't know what that is. I'm outside, so I'll get closer to the camera a little bit. Also ask about the maintenance fees for the building. I think this should always be under 10 euros. I pay 10 euros or 1,000 lek in total. It's like $5 or 5 euros, 500 lek, whatever, for the cleaning of the stairs, and $5 for the potential, breakage of the elevator, It's an elevator fee. And I don't even have a chip, so that's what it's paid for. So then also ask when you're paying what's included in the price, because sometimes electricity could be included in the price. So not electricity, internet may be included in the price as well. The next thing I want to talk about is how to find an apartment. I would say walk around and ask people, hit the streets, hit the local shops, hit the local fruit and vegetable places, and you're going to need some luck. And I would say it's kind of like applying for a job. Like, the more places you apply for, the higher your chances are of finding the job you want. It's the same thing. You have to talk to a lot of people to increase your chances, and it's really just a numbers game at the end of the day from what I've seen. You can also go online and type like appartement με Tirana with the like Q-E-R-A or Q-I-R-A. It depends. If you write it with the people tend to write it with an E, because with an I it kind of like resembles like a curse word or whatever. Before, I also want to mention that when I was living like 18 minutes walking from the pyramid, I was paying about $250, 25,000 lek at that moment. And now it's a bit hard to find anything in that price range within that perimeter from the center. And I think now it's probably about 450 euros to 550 euros, occasionally maybe 400 euros, to be like 20 minutes walking from the center, which is, again, it's not a crazy price if you have a large budget. But if you do not, then yeah, that's pretty damn high for this city compared to the local wages. The other thing I want to say is don't expect to pay cheap prices if you want an American standard of living or something very modern, but also know what you can afford and know what you desire and pay accordingly, because it doesn't make sense to complain for prices here as a foreigner if you have foreign income when the locals are struggling as well, and a lot of them are living with roommates. So it doesn't make sense. You cannot complain about not finding a house that's cheap when you have such a large budget. That's all I'm gonna say for that. As far as like which side of the city is the nicest, my personal opinion, I do not care, because the only thing I look for in a house is having space. Now I like having a balcony, blessed to have two, and access to stores and shops that I like to go to, because for me, I don't do anything in the city. There's nothing in the center of the city that attracts me. Bloku is nice, it has some shops, but I'm not going there every day. I'm not looking to spend money every day at the shops like that. It doesn't make sense to me. It's not useful when you can find the same stuff, typically, as long as they're locally produced, anywhere in the city, basically. At the moment, I paid 350 euros for rent. I used to pay 300 last year, but of course the rent has gone up, so I'm basically paying 50 euros more. A real estate agent told me to hold on to it because of how valuable it is, or how rare it is to find something in that price range. What else did I want to say? I want to say, like, to be honest, like, after checking if it's possible to find something under 400 euros, sorry for the noise, you'll have to sacrifice something like modernity or an elevator or distance or something else. If you want to have something in a certain price range, you might have to make a sacrifice. And also, I think you should be willing to make that sacrifice, because you know what country you're coming to, you know what to expect from the houses here, you know what the bathrooms look like, you know what most people can afford. So let the choice you made in coming here reflect the house you pick, because again, if you're coming here looking for the best of the best, that is a privilege that you have. And if you have access to that and you can afford it and it doesn't hurt you, do it. But also keep in mind that that's also a blessing to be able just to have that, so appreciate that at the same time. And so last thing, if you want to move to Albania, you need help with the residency and whatnot, you can contact the guy in the description. His name is Tahir. I've gotten a lot of people messaging me on TikTok, but again, I don't have social media anymore. There's no way to contact me outside of the comment section. I can't really provide much useful information other than what I'm saying here in these videos. He is really, really helpful. Again, helped me get my residency, helped all my friends and my little posse get our residency as well. Honest guy, punctual, like all the good stuff. I can only recommend him. I wouldn't recommend anyone else to handle this process just because of how well it was done for me and my friends. But also at the same time, if you message him, because I know he does like free consultations and whatnot, don't abuse that, because this man is working really, really hard. So if you're messaging him, be prepared or think about how you want to pay. Don't just use him to milk information out of him, because that's wasting his time. And I know he probably won't say that, so I'm saying it for him. And that's all my quick notes on how to move to Albania and how to find an apartment here in Tirana. And also the last thing is that, okay, I forgot to add this, so I'll say it now, is that when you get a contract, you can have it notarized, and that will help you when applying for your residency, because you need a notarized contract. I think you probably need 2 or 3 copies, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know, ask the lawyer Tahir, he can help you out. And that sometimes landlords might not want to sign a contract or make it too official, because then I think they'll have to pay some type of tax, maybe like 15% or something like that, and they don't want to pay that tax themselves. So it's cheaper for them to just do a regular contract that's not notarized, or just to do like a verbal contract. And so for example, my first 2.5 years, 3 years, actually maybe 4 years, because the first three places I lived, I don't think I had a real contract. I think it was just like, whoa, verbal agreement where I would just pay them cash every month, because it's like this is a cash society. Also, I forgot to mention, like when paying your rent, you can have the option to pay cash, but also there are options sometimes, again, speak with your landlord, to pay it via bank transfer. And I would go to the bank I still go to the bank now every, I don't know, the 5th of the month or something like this, and I pay my rent. I pay a little like $10 commission because I don't have an account with the bank that I use. And it's really a smooth process because I use Tirana Bank. But I remember, I think I was going to Raiffeisen before by the pyramid, and the line was crazy every time I had to pay rent. So also keep in mind that bank lines are a nightmare here. So find the hours when the bank is the least busiest, and then go there at that hour and stick with that. Once you find out when there's no one at the bank, stay with that. Okay, I think that's everything I have to say for this video. Sorry if it's not organized. Sorry if you can't see me or hear me that well. I just wanted to record this really quickly. And yeah, that's all. Peace.